I'm so excited to talk to you today about all the fantastic stuff that you've done at Mars, and it has been such an incredible journey. So we'll dive deeper into all the challenges and all the difficult parts, as well as the fun parts on this way. And I wanted to actually start with kind of a question of how did you get there? So what were you doing at Mars, and how did you end up starting User Centricity? How did you hear about design thinking? So what were you doing before, and what was the first, I suppose, thing that made you think about design thinking?
Yeah, great question. It's nice to take a little stroll down memory lane. So I was actually, first in my family to go to college and to graduate. So I've always, been very passionate about learning and being able to kind of push myself. And so my background is actually in programming and graphic design. So I was kind of a dual major coming out of college. And I actually started at Mars in a pretty unique career path as a front end developer. So I was coming in and helping. It was Mars Chocolate North America at the time, before we merged with Wrigley even, and I was actually taking a lot of the chocolate websites and I was making them user friendly, kind of updating the interfaces and just making it also starting to make it fit for a mobile first world. So that's really when everyone was going to websites on their phone and it was kind of that new time. So my background was really in CSS programming and kind of being able to optimize that. So it was great to come out of college and, kind of have the balance of both the design world, but also that programming world. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door at Mars. Again, very unique. Not everyone gets to use such a hands-on skill set coming into the company. So I feel very fortunate to have had that opportunity. And from there, it really branched into more project management and kind of business partnership. So still working with the segments, and it was kind of something different every day, which I loved. I've always been in a global role, which has been also very eye opening for me as someone who didn't get to travel a lot when I was younger, and being exposed to different languages and cultures has just been so rewarding. So I really branched into kind of project management and strategy. It was everything from analytics and consumer insights to the world of e-commerce and really bringing things, in this D2C atmosphere, especially because historically Mars is very much about retail partnerships and things like that. So kind of taking us outside of our comfort zone a bit. And even some, social campaigns, being able to work on, the Super Bowl, so many things that I just was exposed to in, my first couple years at Mars, and really then landed in the world of kind of e-content. So what I would describe as like data asset management, product syndication, kind of what the consumers are seeing when they visit things like Amazon or when they're going out and trying to shop for our products online, and essentially just trying to take all of that content and make it optimized for this new digital world, optimizing our digital shelf, etc. And it was messy. It was scary. We have so many products, we have so many brands, we have so many, just so many people that are touching different aspects of it and impacted by this. So I really started taking a very user centric approach to really all of this work, but especially when I started working on e-content, trying to pull the consumers in, trying to be, user centered in how we were approaching some of the problems that we were facing. And it ended up being a very rewarding experience. We started to see some really great results. And people started to say, hey, what is this process that you're using? I'm like, well, technically it's design thinking, and I didn't tell people that. I didn't use the fancy words or any terminology, kind of just was getting people in these collaborative environments. And yeah, the results just kind of started to speak for themselves. And I think people liked being taken outside of their comfort zone a bit too. And it kind of then led me on this path to really understanding what does it mean to be human centered. How do we teach people design thinking and really solve the right problems.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like a very fun journey that you had, and definitely you landed at the right spot with design thinking and user centricity. And I love that how you didn't even call it design thinking, because I think this is kind of the scariest thing that people do. And design thinking, I think it has a lot of um, people have views on design thinking, so it's actually a very smart thing to start talking just about users and user centricity. So how did
Absolutely.
it then grow from this idea of yours, a passion of yours, into something bigger? Was there a request from leadership team that this is something that we need? Did you go to your managers and say, hey guys, we need to apply this across the organization? So what was next from you discovering that this is something cool and this works to then it's starting as a movement?
Yeah, great question. I think I always describe it as just a little bit of magic is really how I like to think about it and how I reflect on it. I think really the first piece of it was just really having the opportunity to work on these different projects and partner with people who are taking our outside of our comfort zone was great. But I did have an amazing line manager and mentor who also, was really going to be spearheading and creating the team. And so she kind of took me under her wing and really gave me this opportunity. And I just felt so fortunate to be able to, you know, even go found a team at this company that I love. I didn't know what it meant to start a team. I didn't know what it meant to be a co-founder of a team. So it was all incredibly, exciting and so powerful. But really, on top of that, not only the people, but then the experience and then the mentorship piece. We actually did get direction from our Mars leadership team, and their kind of mission to us was, in year one, I want you to reach 10,000 associates and upskill them and empower them through design thinking. And so that was really it. That was kind of the main mission that they gave us. And we didn't really know what it meant, but we had this blank slate to kind of create whatever we wanted. And so we started as a team of, 3 women, which I still feel very proud of, something I love to share. And we really went after the change agents. We went after people who had the same passion about this sort of thing that we did. And we found that there were tons of advocates, there were tons of practitioners that existed in the company already. And we really latched onto them. And so I think kind of this idea of reaching 10,000 seemed totally impossible. We had no clue what we were going to do. But I think in hindsight, it was just such an amazing ambition to reach. And we did reach it in year one. And currently, we're at 15,000 strong. And it's incredible to just see not only the momentum we created then, but the momentum we've been able to keep. So I feel really proud of just this crazy ambition that we got. And I know there's so much more work to do, but it was a really proud kind of direction that we started with in year one.
I love it, and it's definitely a very ambitious goal. 10,000 associates. That's a lot, and it's across the world as well. So all sorts of cultures, languages, and extra levels of complexity that you have to face.
Absolutely.
Um, but let's go before we jump into all the incredible things that happened in the years to come. I want to go back and actually talk about when you started thinking about design thinking on that scale. You also approached different collaborators and you created your own design thinking process. So how was that, and what were the steps and what were the iterations there, and how did you go about to create your own design thinking diagram and design thinking process?
Yeah, well, I think, as any design thinker knows, anybody that is in the design world, you go out to Google, you type design thinking in, you're going to get thousands of iterations of what the process could look like. And so, as we started to build the movement and we were talking to different people and finding these kind of change agents, we realized that everyone had a basic understanding, but they all use different words. And everyone said, I want to keep driving scale. I want to apply design thinking on my projects. I just wish there was a way I could simplify it. And so, in talking to really hundreds of associates as we were starting the movement, simplicity was really the key to why we created our own process. And one of the things that I love about kind of creating this process is we didn't just go through and make a diagram and just throw it at everyone at Mars. We really listened to what they were saying. And so, everything from the colors, the shapes, the words that we have in our graphic were all incredibly intentional, and it was based on user feedback. So basically, in the graphic that we have, it uses triangles, it uses our new Mars branded colors, and there's different words in it. So for example, we have frame, explore, and then sense make. And when we were first building this graphic, we used the word synthesis for the phase of kind of sense making. And as we were going to Brazil, we went to China, we realized that, of course, people speak different languages. And we quickly learned that the word synthesis actually didn't translate in Portuguese. It didn't translate in Mandarin either. And so we started to even pivot some of the words to make sure it translated and was kind of global friendly. And I think this is something that I felt really proud of because we were able to just humanize this process, simplify it, and it helped really in creating that single language that helped us in continuing to drive scale and consistency. So I think I attribute a lot of success to just people being able to give us that user feedback, and kind of using design thinking to create our own design thinking process.
This is so meta. I love it that being very iterative and prototyping and testing your own design thinking process. This is definitely a way to go. So now you have the 6 steps: frame, explore, sense, make, create, learn, and pilot. So it's kind of obviously similar approach to Double Diamond or anything else. But as you said, you made it yours, you made everyone understand it, and you made it translatable as well, which is such an important thing to think about that not necessarily comes up when you first start.
Right.
I've heard you had many iterations of the diagram. How many did you have?
So I think in total it was about 38 or 39 iterations of this graphic. And again, like going
This is
down to,
mad.
yeah, like colors, shapes. And it was funny too because you put triangles together and you put a circle on it and people were like, it looks like a fish kissing another fish. And we just had these like this silly feedback, but we were like, you know what, you're right. So there was silly feedback, there was very tangible feedback, but we took it all. And I just love like the stories that came out of it too. And I think also our associates felt like they were being part of creating something that was bigger than them. So they were passionate about it and their voice was heard in the creating of that graphic and the creating of this process. So I think it's just incredibly powerful to include them through the journey and kind of have these change agents not just help you build a movement, but taking their feedback and incorporating it, and then they're seeing you taking their feedback. And they feel proud and then they want to share it even more. So I think it's truly a reflection of everyone that helped us in kind of creating and building this movement.
Brilliant. I love it. Now, how long did it take you from kind of the first day of thinking about this process to the final diagram?
So I think probably I would say in total, I would say about 8 months it took. And so the way that we did this though was pretty unique. So we were partnering with IDEO at the time, and one of the things that we did was we created what we called kind of like a design thinking boot camp. So this was really a hybrid format where we would take a true problem that was happening in the company, and it was anything from something that was happening in pet care, maybe it was something in Mars Wrigley, maybe it was something in our human resources department, whatever it was. And we allowed people from cross segment, cross function to come together, and we basically were doing a learn by doing approach. So they were coming in, we were teaching them design thinking, and then we were having them apply it right then and right there in the room. And they were doing it on a real problem. And it was great because it was relevant, it was real, it was tangible, but they were also learning something. And so it had both that real world application, but also, hey, this is new and I'm going to remember this because I'm learning it, but then I'm practicing it right here, right now. And so through those boot camps is when we actually would display this kind of process in this graphic. And it was powerful because not only was it about the colors, the shapes, the words, but making sure it actually worked. And so just continuing to validate with our associates, what are they going to absorb from each of these phases? What do they need to take away? How do we show them how to get closer to their end users? How do we show them how to connect with their consumers? How do we get them prototyping when maybe that's not something they're typically doing in their day jobs? So it was really great to not only validate the process through that boot camp, but really ensure that it was working and that it was memorable. So when they got back to their desks at the end of the day, they were able to start applying it. So it was great to kind of use this unique format to create that process and also validate.
Oh, brilliant. And I love how you talk about applying it straight away, because I think this is usually the biggest challenge when you get any sort of new process, tools, methodologies, is they all sound great in theory, but then you actually have to use them in practice. And there is a big barrier and fear of using anything new. So I think going over this barrier as part of the boot camps is a brilliant idea. And I assume you started applying it to lots of projects straight away, but as I know from my personal experience, not easy, and kind of comes with a lot of challenges. So what were the first projects that you applied design thinking? And I suppose how did it change from how you would approach projects before, and how did it benefit the projects that you had those tools and frameworks to use?
Yeah, so at first I would say people were like kind of hesitant. We had some people who were very excited and wanted to start using design thinking and dive into it, but we also had people who were hesitant because um, they felt they had the solution. They felt they knew their users or what they needed to do. And so in some cases people were saying, going and talking to my users, doing interviews, that's so time consuming. I don't have time to do that. Which is, I'm sure, a classic something. Anybody that uses design thinking, I'm sure here's this pain point constantly. So again, what we did is we really didn't lean into the skeptics at first. We really continued to attach ourselves to the change agents and to people that really wanted to take this approach and apply it on their projects. One of the first teams actually that we did it with was our Mars retail group and Mars Wrigley. So I'm sure you're familiar with the My M&Ms brand. It's where you can go online, you can customize M&Ms, you can upload your face, you can upload a photo, you can upload nice little things for like a baby shower or a birthday party. I know my husband and I got them when we got engaged. So you can customize and personalize them. And of course, in this world that we're living in, personalization is so great right now. I mean, people love it. So this was a really small, nimble team, but they were really passionate about learning these new approaches. And I think the biggest thing when we started to approach this team was they were close to their users. They had a good sense of, what was working and what wasn't. But where they really paused and reflected and what they took away from really being upskilled in the design thinking process was, we can talk about solutions all day, but we really need to frame the right problems. And we can do that by really talking and getting closer to our users. So I think that kind of reframing and being able to ask smaller questions and kind of being able to unlock that was really where the power happened with that team. And I think it takes, I give them a lot of credit because it's hard to admit, hey, are we solving the right problems or were we just going into solution mode? So I think it's hard to ask the right questions. It's easy to find kind of solutions and move towards that. But that was really one of our first projects that we started to look at. And the thing that I think I'm most proud of with this team is not only did we come up with an amazing solution, we drove tons of sales through it, and I can speak to you a little bit more about kind of the details behind it. But what really stuck was this team continues to work in this way. So they continue to be user centered. They completely shifted their organization so that they have people who are focusing on consumer insights, people who are constantly talking and connecting with consumers. But then they also have people who are looking at the prototyping and delivery side of things. And so they really embrace design thinking to help them frame the right problem. And then they actually use Agile to deliver the right solution. And so it's also great to see how they kind of mix the methodologies to almost restructure the entire way that this team worked. And that was kind of my biggest takeaway and one of the things that I felt was most powerful from being able to work with this group and kind of take that on as our first project.
I love it. And definitely like the reframing of the problem, I think is such a powerful thing that actually, as we always say, if you don't have time for the full process, do research and prototyping. If you don't have time for both, then just do research, just because the power of hearing what users really need and reframing the problem around that actually changes a lot down the line in any project. Let's actually dive deeper into that case study, because I think
Sure.
there are so many exciting small details that you discovered on the way. So what, I suppose, how did you go about, first of all, picking that project? Why was it this particular project that you decided to apply design thinking on as a first big one? And what was difficult, what was different, and what did you discover in each step?
Yeah, so this is such a fun project. And again, I could talk about this in detail, but I'll give you some of my favorite highlights from it. So really the first thing that happened, again, we really went towards this group because we had some great sponsorship behind it. And so I think, again, I can't speak enough to leadership supporting people on a journey to user centricity. So it's one thing to be user centered and kind of try this, but you really need a leader that's going to understand, hey, we're employing completely new behaviors. We have a totally new mindset going into this. And I think also the willingness to experiment and potentially fail. That's scary. And so we had some really strong sponsorship, going into this project. And I think that was absolutely critical. So when we started to look at the model, they really wanted to drive more sales. They wanted to drive more growth. And this was kind of the general challenge that we were looking at. And so at first we thought, can we explore this more with the digital customers and maybe drive some more online sales because they could be higher. So the first thing that we did actually was we started to say, well, we know that people love the M&M store. We have so many physical locations. People go crazy over it. There's lines outside of Times Square constantly. What could we learn from the in-person experience that we could maybe replicate to the digital experience? So what did we do? We took the group of people who are all based in New Jersey, which is where I'm from, and we took that core team. We drove into New York City for the day, and we stood outside the Times Square store, the M&M Times Square store, and we were inside. We were meeting with the core team that runs the retail location, and we started interviewing consumers as they were coming through the store. We were observing them. We were taking copious notes and just trying to understand what were they doing there? Why did they want to come to the store in the middle of the day on a Tuesday? It just seemed like, what was the motivations? And so we learned so much about the consumers just being able to be in there. And really one of our key takeaways was that they did love that customized approach. They did love kind of the uniqueness of some of the products. But we felt that we weren't really talking to the right users. There wasn't too much that we were able to learn through this process. And so I think one of the main takeaways that I had is, you can talk to the wrong users. And that is something that happens sometimes through the design thinking process. So how do you keep looking for those extreme users? And so, of course, we have the physical locations, we had the digital locations, or the digital footprint that the My M&Ms group has. But there was kind of this unexplored area within personalization and customization around B2B. And so what we did is we actually started to target, again, some more extreme users in the B2B space. So we did lots of different research on this front. We did some analogous research, but we also brought in people, for example, from Deloitte, LinkedIn, and we did almost a user panel with them where we interviewed them and we said, hey guys, are you aware of the My M&Ms product? We showed them some samples. And one of the things that really stuck with them was these little business card holders. So it's like a little plastic holder. You can get it branded with, your company colors. You can put whatever words you want on it, and then you slip your business card in it. And it's a great kind of little leave behind, especially for people that work at different companies. When you meet someone, you want to use it as a networking. It's really special and memorable. And basically, the consumers loved it when we showed it to them in the panel. We said, hey, I just didn't know that this mass customization and kind of personalization existed. I would like to do more. And we didn't really have a B2B kind of digital footprint for My M&Ms. What did exist was very basic. It wasn't a great experience. And one of the biggest things that we found is to place a big order, you actually had to call a 1-800 number and place it over the phone. So that was obvious. I mean, one of the very obvious situations where we're like, okay, obviously this needs to change. We can make this a much cleaner and better experience. And as we started to go through, and this is where I love the idea of kind of cross-functional teams coming together, is as we started to continue to go through the processes and say, what could this look like? How can you order online? How can we optimize this process? We actually found that the legal team we needed to pull them in. And what was happening was when another company wanted to upload their logo, so for example, LinkedIn or Deloitte wanted to upload their logo onto an M&M, we had a 57-page document that they had to print, sign, and fax back to us so that we could legally use their logo and print it. So, it was a trademark concern. It makes sense. So again, we took that whole experience and we just made it merely a checkbox on the website so that when they're checking out, they don't have to any longer print this out and fax it to us, which seemed crazy that this was happening in this day and age. And then finally, we really then kept going through and kind of mapping the entire journey that they would go to from a B2B experience. And one of the last big things that we realized is we were treating people who were kind of ordering smaller orders as well as larger orders kind of with the same level of customer service. And we realized that when people were ordering for large events, especially trade shows from a business to business perspective, the order size was much larger. And we felt that this was a key area of opportunity that we could really explore. So we kind of implemented this idea of a white glove service on top of it to support these larger orders. And so then larger orders were treated slightly differently than smaller orders. We helped them navigate through the process. Oh, sorry.
Nicole, I think you muted yourself somehow.
Oh, no.
Just a second ago, you just said a white glove, so you can start from white glove service.
Okay, sorry. Oh, shoot. How did I do that? Okay, let me just minimize
No, just sound disappeared for a second.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. All right, let me start again. So then one of the last things as we continue to map this the journey map through this process one of the last things that we looked at was kind of this idea of a white glove service. So really making sure that we were giving a different level of customer service to our larger orders than our smaller orders. And again, this was just a huge area of opportunity for that B2B space. So, these were kind of three of the things that really I think are most memorable and jump off the page when we looked at this case study. But ultimately, when we rolled out the new B2B website, we launched a new configurator so it was easier to customize and personalize it, including that little checkbox for the legal components. And when we rolled it out and we kind of did some media campaigns to amplify it, we ended up driving $3 million in sales over 6 months. And so you can kind of see through this user-centric approach, really getting closer to the consumers, finding kind of this opportunity area, and then these pretty obvious components. These were clear pain points of somebody going through the ordering process. We optimized it all. And we did this, actually over a course of 6 weeks. And so I love to also just share, timeline wise, because we were solving the right problem and because we found these pain points, talking to the users actually accelerated it. They accelerated the results, they accelerated the sales, and we were able to learn so much. And so I think when people kind of come to you with that skepticism of, hey, I don't really have time to talk to my users, it's going to waste my time. Actually, it helped us. It made us operate with so much more speed in this case. So I think there's a lot of power to be said about it. And again, I think the belief that this team had, the passion in wanting to change and use these new behaviors was critical. The sponsorship was critical, but we were so proud of the results that they were able to accomplish and that they've stuck.
Brilliant. Oh, it's such a great example because I love how you talk about kind of both the empathy and the business side. So on one hand, it's all about learning about users and understanding their pain points and trying to figure out what's the best for them. By the end of the day, it does drive incredible business results and increases the revenue. So it is good for business to actually think about the users. And
Absolutely.
we personally love your My M&M service. We have some yellow M&Ms as well. So
I love it.
everyone, we had it at our events, and when anyone sees them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're so cool! Where did you get custom M&Ms?" So it has a really great word of mouth as well. So great service,
I
and
love
well
it.
done on achieving such great business results in a very very short time frame. Because I think that's again a very very key component of any innovation is understanding how long does it take and is it feasible. And in your case, you did it incredibly well. Um,
Absolutely. Yes. Huge shout out to
so
that team.
this was kind of, yeah, I mean, this was like a very intense first year for you to kind of to think about, and obviously starting anything new and implementing design thinking and introducing people to design thinking is a very very difficult task. So what are, I suppose, any particular challenges that you remember from that period that you maybe didn't expect that you'll face, and how did you go about solving them?
Oh, I love this question. So I think reflecting on year one, I would say the biggest challenge that we really faced was how to handle skeptics. And so skeptics are always going to exist. I think anytime you're trying to drive a meaningful change, you're trying to change mindsets and behaviors, people get uncomfortable, and it's something you kind of have to accept. And I think the thing that surprised me most is, especially in the boot camps that we were doing, in kind of these real problems that we were trying to solve for the business, we wanted to convince the skeptics. You want to kind of walk over to a skeptical person and like almost shake them and be like, why don't you believe in this? What can I do to change your mind? And so you kind of get hung up on it. You want to change that person's mind. You want to be able to take them on this journey and just have them convinced right away. And we quickly realized like that wasn't going to happen for everyone, especially depending on the function that they sat on. They didn't think user centricity was relevant. They didn't think design thinking could help them. And it was frustrating. And, as somebody who was building design thinking as a global capability at the organization, I wanted to understand why. I wanted to sit down. I wanted to spend so much time with them and dig deeper. And the thing that we kind of learned and had to take away from this is that we have to acknowledge the skeptics exist, but we can't waste too much time on them. Because if we spent all of our energy trying to convince and kind of convert that skeptic, we would be mentally drained. We would be exhausted. And so we kind of had to accept that they have to go on their own journey. They have to take their own time to accept it, or maybe never accept it. And that's okay. So that was, I think, probably the biggest and hardest pill for me to swallow. And really, we continued going after those change agents, the people that were passionate. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had from all of that is through this kind of grassroots movement that we were building, the message didn't always have to come from us. The message could come from someone in their team. The message could come from, somebody that's the same level, lower or higher than them, to really say, I'm applying this, and let them see it in action. So I think also the kind of the sender of the message, or the practitioner that's applying this, really helps in navigating that as a challenge, because the skeptics will always be there. So I think that would probably be, from an emotional standpoint, the thing that has really stuck with me the most. And I think it still reigns true, not as much, because of course this movement has grown, just expanded day after day after day, and it still has so much momentum in year 3. But that would be my biggest takeaway in terms of challenges from the first year.
Oh, I mean, this is such a relevant and very, very familiar challenge. I think definitely skeptics, they exist in every company, but I love your advice of not wasting too much energy on them and actually focusing on moving it forward and expanding it beyond what it was back then. So now we're moving into year 2. So after you had this success and you kind of build some momentum with the movement, I suppose you proved that it is needed. So what happened then? What was your strategy or vision for year 2, and what were you trying to achieve next?
Yeah, so year 2, I think, the biggest thing that I would say is we really validated, we continued to kind of build, awareness and desire in year 1. But as we headed into year 2, we really needed to build the knowledge and the ability side of things. And so what we did is we blew out and expanded a training program. And of course, our partnership started, which was amazing. And the second component was, of course, really honing in on the project partnership side. And so ultimately, what we did is we kind of created the business model for what user centricity could become for the organization. We were still a very small team at the time. So, understanding what the capacity was or how we could continue to drive scale was a key question. And I really think the quality of that scale, it started to get a little scary, because we had so much momentum. We had other people that were driving this. So there were just a lot of questions that were continuing to come up. So I think year 2 was very much about continuing to evolve with the maturity of this movement that we had created. So when you have a group of 10,000, there's people that were there from day 1, but we also had people who had just joined, yesterday. And so they were at very different points in their journey. They were at very different maturity levels. And so to ensure that we were still creating the new but sustaining the old, was critical. And it was confusing and it was hard at first. But again, we just continued to keep a pulse on the movement. We continued to interview them, understand what are your pain points, what do you need? And we kept kind of iterating on what we had created. And I think that the expansion of our training program allowed our associates to go deeper into different techniques, like becoming a trainer themselves, becoming a practitioner. How do they apply it on their projects? But of course, one of my favorite is really, becoming even a facilitator. So being a facilitator, getting up in front of a room, navigating a problem, it was so powerful to see our associates doing this. It wasn't just our user centricity team that was coming in and doing it anymore. It was our associates. And I mean, this supported their development plans. It took them outside of their comfort zones. We saw, associates getting promoted because of it. And so I think it was just a beautiful component to see come to life. And just being able to continue to validate what is working, and how do we support our associates to drive this cultural change, but also kind of supporting their career paths. And it was something really special and organic to see come to life.
Amazing. I love it. And we definitely enjoyed collaborating with you on that, because we could hear all the passion and enthusiasm from all your associates across the world. And for us, it was like very interesting to hear all the different challenges that they face and kind of how ready they come to each session, and they want to do it. They genuinely want to move this initiative forward. They want to be part of the movement. They're asking, what else can we do? How can we go around this challenge? So it was quite exciting exciting to work with people who are that passionate about it. So clearly you inspired them enough in year one to build it further. So in terms of the things like you were doing, so year one was all about these boot camps and kind of larger programs. So year two was more specific facilitation training. What else were you doing in year two to kind of build the movement?
Yeah, so again, I love this question too because I think it was so important to have these kind of tangible aspects to point to. But we continued that grassroots approach. So and gosh, like it was just so much fun. It was just we were having so much fun too. I think that's something I just always have to reiterate. But one of the main things that we kind of really continued in year two was what we called community calls, and so we still do them today. We started the community calls because again we had no clue how to get started in building this movement. And I always reference kind of this YouTube video. It's somebody at a concert, they stand up on a hill and they start dancing, and then they're the only one, and they have a huge crowd of people looking at them. They're like, what is that person doing? It truly takes just one person to kind of stand up and do something different. And so we started these community calls. They were just kind of giving people an introduction, saying, hey, what does user centricity mean to you, helping us co-create and define it. And from there, it really started to evolve. It started to get into case studies like the Mars Retail Group, my M&M story. We had stories from Pet Care, from Banfield, from all different aspects of our company. And again, the message wasn't always coming from us. It was coming from our associates who were actually on their user centricity journey. And these community calls are really special because they're different, they're unique. We do them internally, we do them externally, but we really try and keep them fresh and continue to update them. So they've evolved, of course, since day one, but something that has really stuck and been special as part of a tangible tool to keep building the movement.
Wonderful. I love this. So you had the kind of the main learning initiatives like this today, Become a Design Thinking Facilitator that we're running with you. You had the community calls again to inspire everyone. You also had a hub where everyone could go in their own time. And so can you talk more about the self-paced things that people can go to and learn more about design thinking and user centricity?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was truly our team prototype. So we actually spent, we were up until I think 2 a.m. one morning, the day before we launched our User Centricity Hub, and it's truly just an internal website that we've built. And our team maintains it. It's nothing super fancy. It has some nice graphics. It has some great content that you can navigate through. Some clear search features and structure. But ultimately, this is really all of the content that we've created. So it's stories and use cases. It's how to access our training courses. It's different materials that you can use to facilitate. So things like templates, posters, etc. Also videos, so different training videos that they can get bite-sized clips of. Hey, how do I build a persona, or how can somebody navigate me through this? So it's all sorts of different aspects that they can come to, and really it's an always on demand kind of website. So they can access it at any time in any country. And that's really the great part, is people can do it at their own leisure and really use it as the way to continue to build that sense of community, but also trialing different content, because we like to try new things. We don't always know what's going to work. And so being able to have that as an outlet is really special for us.
I love it. And there is so much great content in your User Centricity Hub. I love that you constantly update it, and there are new tools and kind of new things to learn. So it doesn't feel like this stale kind of resource wiki that just kind of stays there for the sake of staying. But it is really a living ecosystem where people comment, where people upload their projects. You've got these beacons as well. Again, your projects, the case studies of applying design thinking. So it becomes this amazing space for everyone, on one hand, to get inspired, on another hand, get support and knowledge to actually do more things with design thinking and user centricity. Really powerful. I loved it. And definitely I can see a lot of work that everyone in your team puts into that, which is it is very special. So you also mentioned that one of the challenges of the year two was actually maintaining the quality at a scale. So with all these different things that are happening, so how did you maintain the quality?
Yeah, great question. So I think definitely we're still learning. So that's one of the things that I just always like to share is, we haven't gotten everything perfectly right. We've gotten a lot right. We've gotten a lot wrong. And so we transparently talk about what's working and what's not. And I think that's really critical. One of the things that I would share is First, probably the champion program that we built. So as we continue to go through and drive scale, we found that there are people who really get this. There are people who are really good at it and can continue to drive this message. And so we wanted to really lift them up. We wanted to give them the right level of recognition. We wanted them to be seen as the thought leaders in the organization, as the change agents that can continue to create this cultural change and shift that we're driving. So I'd say the first piece was really that champion program. And we give these champions kind of different perks. So one of them is actually access into all of the projects that the user centricity team is working on. If we can't, run a project or help people with a problem, we actually pull champions in. And so again, kind of growing back to that career pathing piece of this, it really helps with their development, and we continue to lift them up and kind of keep that recognition. Of course, they get lots of other fun little perks like T-shirts and things like that, of course, and just keep it fresh and interesting. But I think really that champion program helped us in maintaining the right quality, and that was really our first stab at how do we build these people, but also recognize and support and keep getting them promoted in the company, because it was special to be able to do that. And I think a couple other things that were happening was we were embedding in the organization. There were different aspects where we said, there's really high quality of certain things that are coming to life. And one of my favorite examples is, a lot of times when we're working on projects, you have a project brief and it's pretty generic and you can read it and you say, okay, I get it. But what the company started implementing, and this happened organically, it wasn't a mandate, it wasn't anything that was required. They started putting how might we statements in the project briefs. So rather than putting, a very detailed explanation of what the problem was, they asked it in the form of a how might we statement. And I just love being able to share that, because I think it was truly, the design thinking process and being able to frame the right problem through a user-centric lens coming to life in such an organic way. So that was really, one of my kind of favorite things that we started to see, and it was happening in all different pockets of the company. And again, how might we translate in different languages? So being able to see it in different languages was great too. But I think ultimately continuing to see people also involve their end users kept the right level of quality. So a lot of people continued to bring our consumers into the room. They were doing consumer connects, or they were connecting with their end users, whoever they may be, even if it was another Mars associate. And so I think that sense of keeping the end user constantly top of mind, keeping them involved through the problems, allowed people to maintain that sense of quality and really ensure that, hey, we're not just trying to come in and check a box saying that we're doing design thinking. We're truly embracing this process, taking ourselves outside of the comfort zone, and really just evolving as we go through this. So I think those were probably some of my favorite examples of how we were trying to drive some of that quality.
Brilliant. And I can imagine it wasn't easy. Again, talking about the international and geographically vast audience that you have, and the languages, the cultures, just the locations. I think it is such an important thing to understand how you can get it to the operational level where it's scalable. Did you feel like there were any differences in different markets, like North America versus Europe versus Latin America or Asia?
We always sensed an aspect from really everyone in the world, like having some desire to become user centered. And I think some people were more open to it, depending on segment, region, function, even. So, I think somebody in sales or marketing is more inclined to be like, oh, yeah, user centricity is very relevant to me, as opposed to maybe somebody who sits in finance and is like, how the heck can this help me? Or even supply chain, how the heck is this going to help me? These were natural questions that people were asking. And so I think it wasn't necessarily just geographical. I think it was segment based. I think it was brand based. I think it was function based. So there's just so many components, I think, that went into it. And we learned a lot because we leaned into these different functions. So we've worked on projects with every single function at the company, and being able to continue to validate and say, hey guys, this does work. Here's how you can do it, and kind of showing them and guiding them through the process. I think that was a really important piece that we needed to do. But yeah, that would be my short answer to it.
Great. And definitely, I think a lot of enthusiasm from different people. And sometimes actually we found that even in our sessions we had people from finance and supply chain. And I think they are those who get converted into this user centricity, they become the best advocates, because it is so far from their day-to-day thinking and day-to-day jobs, so that when they actually get across it, they're like, wow, this is really, really life changing to think about what we're doing day to day in this
Ugh,
particular way. So
it's
this
so
is
true.
amazing.
It's so true. There's no better feeling than when you convert someone. But I think again, it goes back to that idea that you have to let them go on their own journey. And when they can make that personal testament and give kind of this vulnerable story to, hey, I didn't believe in any of this, and here's why I believe now. There's no better story that you can make. You know, it's being able to have everyone kind of share their own, which is again where other skeptics will start to come along too. So it's acknowledging it, but not wasting too much time on it, letting them go through the journey themselves.
Oh, great, love it. And now we're in year three,
Oof, yeah.
and 2020, the year three for user centricity movement, which on its own was a very interesting year, and for you guys, obviously, that drove a lot of changes and new initiatives. So, what was your, I suppose, goal and aim at the beginning of year three, and how are you going about it? What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate at the end of 2019 into 2020. We were, of course, a small team of five. We've actually grown, so we're a team of eight now. So still small but mighty. And so, one of my favorite things that we really pivoted with in kind of growing our team is we're expanding some of our user centric capabilities. So we're really expanding things like user experience, expanding on research, expanding on design, expanding on prototyping, even agile ways of working. We're kind of bringing all of this into the narrative of becoming user centric. And so, of course, each of those have, they're their own beast in and of itself, but trying to, again, simplify the language, humanize it, make it relevant no matter what segment or function you sit in, no matter where in the world you are, and just understanding, how can I start to apply this? How do I know if I need it? And again, this is all rooted in feedback that we've gotten from kind of this growing movement as well as new people to the movement, just trying to understand how do we keep fitting in these gaps and or filling these gaps in. So that was, I think, one of the biggest things that we did, and one of the things that we're still evolving this year. And I think really of course, the thing that we've pivoted most to is this virtual environment. So we used to fly all around the world. We would do in-person workshops, whether they were these large-scale boot camps or smaller immersions. Even some of our training courses, everything was face to face. And so that has been a big pivot for us in being able to virtualize all of this. We just started a partnership with Mural, so that's been something we've been, really proud to implement that and take some of these kind of collaborative ways of working into a very visual online experience, which engages our associates, but still drives results. And finally, the third piece for this year is really around leadership initiatives. So, I mentioned a lot that we've kind of built this grassroots movement in year one and year two, and I think the grassroots movement, you kind of can't stop it now. It's just like this well-oiled machine that keeps growing and growing. However, leaders, we realized we needed to better upskill them in, of course, definitely understanding user centricity, absolutely, but how do they manage people who are on this user centric journey? We saw a lot of people that were, kind of struggling a little bit or trying to understand how to talk to their line managers, or their line managers didn't understand why they were using design thinking on a supply chain project. And so we wanted to do a bit more education in setting the leaders up for success. So when somebody is embracing these new behaviors, they are bringing a new mindset to everything that you're doing. How do you manage that? How do you act as a leader and really sponsor this change? Because at the core of it, we're trying to change the culture, and that's really scary. So it's scary for the people going through it. It's scary for our leaders. And so being very intentional about how we upskill the leaders this year, and kind of guiding them through this process was also a really big key component. And it's been very rewarding so far.
Amazing. And what did you learn about the kind of upskilling the leaders? What is the most useful thing to tell them or to give them to support this change and support their teams?
I think it's really asking them, what are your pain points? What are your barriers to this change happening? What are you afraid of? And when we actually start to understand what these different aspects are, we can address them. And so anytime we've done a leadership training, we don't go in and just teach them, hey, here's user centricity, rah, rah, rah. We actually go in and we say, what are your pain points? Why do you think this won't work? And they tell us, I think maybe this will be a blocker, that will be a blocker. And then we work with them on ways to address it. And so I think, my takeaway is that it's not a one size fits all. Every leadership team has come back with something different, especially from a global, regional perspective. And that's important. It's important that, we acknowledge people are on different paths of their journey. They're facing different problems in their portion of the business. So being able to kind of tailor it and customize it and address it and hold their hand through it, I think has been really, really nice to see evolve. And just kind of, again, leaning into some of the skepticism, being able to address it, but being able to extract that passion too is where the magic happens.
I love how your approach to design thinking is all about design thinking, asking the right questions and prototyping and testing. This is how you do it.
So
Love
kind
it.
of like an
And
inception feeling.
it is. So, what are particular challenges that you are addressing right now, apart from convincing the leadership? What are you focusing right now as a kind of the main year 3 challenge?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest thing, and I hit on it briefly because we saw some aspects of it, but I think it's really how do we embed. So I think a lot of people talk about, I go in and I use design thinking, but I was never telling people we were doing design thinking. And so I think sometimes putting like a formal stamp on being user centric or using design thinking or applying agile, it intimidates people. And so what we're trying to do is really embed in these typical ways of working and some of the typical processes at Mars, so that people just feel that this is a natural way to approach things rather than it being kind of this formal user-centric process or journey that they have to go through. So we're looking at all sorts of aspects of ways that we can embed, whether it's through an associate's development plan, whether it's through onboarding, whether it's even through some of our processes. So there's so many different aspects that we're looking at right now. But again, I think it really comes down to kind of embedding, just blending and becoming that natural part of how we do business and really bringing the Mars purpose to life. Because I think that's one of the special pieces of our company is that each segment has its own purpose, but Mars as a company and as an organization is purpose driven. And so we want to show people, through being user centric and embedding this into the organization, it'll help us actually bring our purpose to life. And I think that's what really excites a lot of people.
Brilliant. I mean, it has been such an incredible journey. We just quickly talked about these 3 years, like in 1 hour, but actually, it has been a very, very interesting path for you personally as well. So, talking about you and your role in this, because again, you started probably not knowing what will happen in 3 years. How did your role change throughout this journey? And now that you have a team of 8 as well, all of the people kind of focusing on different things, what were you doing at the beginning and what do you do now?
Yeah, so year one, I think was really going everywhere and kind of it was building a capability in a completely new way and really just disrupting the company. I think making people uncomfortable, dragging consumers into rooms, running these boot camps. And it was a bit of chaos, to be honest with you. We really went everywhere. We didn't have a target user at the time. We were going after change agents, absolutely, but it wasn't just one segment. We didn't stay just within, kind of our digital technologies portion of the business. We wanted to make user centricity. We wanted everyone to own it. And so it was a little bit of chaos that year one. It was everything from getting up and facilitating a training to running a boot camp for 200 people to building the hub to hosting a community call. It was a little bit of everything. And I think that was, I mean, even being on this podcast right now, I hated public speaking. I would be a nervous wreck getting up in front of a room. So I think for me personally, that was a big, big step for me, just coming out of my shell in that respect. But for me in year two, we really shifted more towards focus. We had a lot more structure and, of course, really had more intense targeting when it came to training, understanding the maturity of our audiences, really going, head first into our segments to say, hey, Mars Wrigley, what are your key challenges and how can we partner with you to make this relevant? Hey, pet care, how can we partner with you to make this relevant? Even our food segment, we really went in with a lot of intentionality and a lot of structure to kind of create these use cases as well, and continue to show people, hey guys, the results can be proven, and here's how we're going to show you how it can be done. So I think year two definitely brought a lot more focus and more project oriented, but still that hybrid approach of training alongside a problem to really bring a project to life. And I think year three, of course, is really different because we continue to strive for those results, both on our projects, but also our champions, continuing to support them and making sure they're reaching their results, amplifying that hybrid approach of training and problem solving. But really, my role personally has now shifted, of course, to really upskilling our leaders. And so, how do we move from kind of this bottom up movement and this grassroots approach to a more top down movement? Because nothing that we've built has been a mandate, and we don't want it to come across that way. We want it to remain organic. We want people to, we want to continue to activate those change agents, but making sure that we can do that in an organic way with leadership now. So it's brought its own new set of challenges, but I think it's been really special to kind of keep attacking the organization from so many different angles.
Oh, I love it. And Nicole, seriously, you're such a incredible person, and I think your energy and drive is just so inspiring. You managed to go through all these 3 years building the team and driving this forward because it's not an easy thing. And I think like with any new initiative, changing behaviors and just making change in general, especially in large organizations, it is very tricky. But sticking to it for 3 years and growing it and moving forward, no matter what happens in the world or what happens
Mm-hmm.
in the organization, that's definitely a next level. So a lot of respect to you for that, and admiration from our entire team, because it has been incredible to see what you managed to achieve through these years. And obviously we love working with you, but what you've done on your own as well, it's just unbelievable. So yeah, big respect to you.
Well, we couldn't have done it without the help of everyone, and I feel I'm very fortunate to have so many amazing people that push me, and I continue to learn from, and that was kind of my biggest takeaway, is just there is so much to learn in this space. And I think just so fortunate to be on this journey, and to have partners like you, and to have people who are passionate about it. It's really special.
Amazing. Well, I will have very last question to you.
Yeah.
So obviously, this has been a long journey. So if you had to give yourself advice, whether it's 5 years ago or 3 years ago when you just started, that could have saved you a lot of maybe energy on time or resources, anything. What, and probably there is someone like you listening right now who is just about to start this journey on their own. So any advice you could give them?
Oh, great question. I think probably just enjoy the ride and have fun. I think also remembering to that you don't have to have all the answers, because I think sometimes you go into this and it's like when I'm training people, I feel like I have to have every answer at first, and I realize no, I don't. It can be a conversation, and I can learn from them because I'm not going to have every answer for them. And I think just learn and absorb as much as you can from the experience, from the different problems, from the different cultures. That was really, I think, the most rewarding thing for me, through this experience. And people always joked with me that, if I stay at Mars long enough, I'm going to find something to write a book about. And I think this whole experience and this whole journey is absolutely what I'll write a book about one day. So it's, I think looking back on it, just enjoy the ride and absorb and learn as much as you can.
Love it. And I would love to read your book. I think that would be an incredible story. Seriously, I think with everything that you've done so far, I think there is a lot to learn from this, and I'm sure a lot to reflect on as well. So
Yes, definitely. Very,
looking
very
forward to
fortunate.
hearing more about year three, year four, year five, and more years to come on this amazing path. Thank you so much, Nicole. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I feel like we can talk with you for a very long time about all things user centricity and design thinking. And it's always a pleasure. Thanks for sharing your journey. And I'm sure a lot of people will learn from that. And yeah, just keep doing great work. Love to hear what more is there for Mars, and looking forward to hearing your updates. Thank you.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate being able to share this story, and just through our partnership has been amazing. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. And until next time.
Bye.